It's an aid in everyday life. It can be personal or business. In the business world, good communication is important for the daily operation of the company, but can also affect sales and profitability. Without good communication, the internal and external structure of the business can face numerous challenges that can ultimately lead to the demise. What is effective communication? In the information age, we have to send, receive, and process huge numbers of messages every day. But effective communication is about more than just exchanging information. It's about understanding the emotion behind the information. Effective communication can improve relationships at home, work, and in the social situation by deepening your connection to others and improving teamwork, decision making, and problem solving. It enables you to communicate even negatively and difficult messages without creating conflict or destroying trust. Effective communication combines a set of skills including nonverbal communication, attentive listening, and the ability to manage stress in the moment, and the capacity to recognize and understand your own emotions and those of the person you are communicating with. Efficient communication occurs at a minimal cost in terms of resource expended. It's nice for the communication to be both effective and efficient, but as we know it, it isn't always achieved. Many times we are too busy or too lazy to invest enough time to make sure the communication is effective. Instead, we shoot for efficiency. Like example, we tend to send emails and text messages instead of talking to somebody face to face. Now we're going to persuasion and credibility in communication. Communication is not only about sharing information or being heard. It's about the intent of one party to influence or motivate the other in the desired way. Persuasive communication results in a recipient agreeing with or supporting the message being presented. For example, get things done through relationship with peers, teammates, and co-workers and bosses. Their success is often due more to convincing them to give orders. Credibility communication, as that which is based on trust, respect, in the eye of others, integrity.
Transparency is going to lead to an employee not really knowing what's going on. It's going to be very chaotic. People don't know how to interpret the rules, interpret the company's philosophy, like what that company stands for when it's management, financial, anything like that. That's what that is. Another thing that this chapter touches on is open book management. Open book management is basically from that McDonald's worker, that the cashier to the CEO is walked through everything financial of that company. That's open book management. That goes back to communication transparency, because those two kind of tie in together, because if everything's clear and everyone knows what's going on, that leads to effective communication on both parts, the employee and the employer. Another thing that this chapter touches on is the electronic grapevine. What that is things are effectively communicated in email, YouTube, things like that. The chapter touches on a little issue with Domino's. Someone had uploaded a video about a pizza, being made gross, or it was disgusting, and Domino's had it removed because that electronic grapevine, it spreads. Twitter, Yahoo, all that's booming, so it's gonna spread. So that's just effective communication through that. The lack of electronic grapevine, because people look, so a lack of that, people won't be able to see that company and that company's expectations and all that. The last thing, and I feel like this is the most important to me of this chapter, is active listening and feedback. The thing is, active listening is actually listening to a person, knowing their, you know, their what they're going through, basically on the job, their concerns, and actually listening and taking that in, and then giving out some type of conclusion, some type of solution, something like that. That's active listening, actually listening and knowing what that person is actually going through. And feedback, just actually giving, a person something back, saying, trying to solve their problem or whatever. That's just something that feedback is.
Communication. There are many things that can have an effect on communication. Things like noise, information filtering, poor choice of channels, poor written or oral expressions, failures to recognize nonverbal signals, and physical distractions. Good communicators use the correct channel or combination of channels to illustrate or display their intended purpose. In society, it is important to have good communication skills, whether it's in a business or personal relationship. Communication can result in inaccurate information being exchanged. The pathway through which a message moves from sender to receiver is the communication channel. Communication comes in different forms. Spoken channels work best for complex and difficult messages, and written channels are most acceptable for simple messages that are easy to convey. Messages through communication can be received through gestures and body language. This is called nonverbal communication. 55% of a message impact may come through nonverbal communication. Our body language talks even as we maintain silence. People speak, sometimes our body language says different things than what our words may convey. Example of mixed messages. Mixed messages can be executed unconsciously, like agreeing with someone, but moving back from the meeting or conversation taking place. A number of physical distractions can interfere with communication effectiveness. A telephone ringing, unexpected visitors, or lack of privacy. Communication can be received through cross-cultural communication. Gestures and body movements may be accepted in one culture and not in another. It's important to know who or what you are working with when it comes to communication. So can result in someone being offended without your intent. Effective communication is essential as people work together. Collaboration is best when communication is thorough, especially within organizations. Causes of conflict. There are numerous effects that can expose the door to conflict. Role ambiguities, resource scarcities, task interdependence, and competing objectives just happen to be a few. Role ambiguities stress job indecisions and indistinguishable task objectives. Generating a need to share or contend for resources creates scarcities. When one must depend on another to execute well in order for their performance to be considered pleasing, such as that of group work, task interdependencies are formed. Competing objectives come into play when goals and rewarding situations are poorly created or maintained, causing groups to work at each other's disadvantages. Another root of conflict is created in structural differentiation, which presents differences in the organization's structure and the characteristics of those within that structure. Unresolved conflict is a recurring matter that will linger and continue to emerge as long as the issue is never entirely resolved. The appropriate way to address conflict in any form is through conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is the eradication of underlying causes of conflict. Conflict resolution moderates suppression of conflict and the potential for comparable situations to arise in the future. There are 5 styles of conflict management that result from a combination of both cooperative and assertive behaviors. Avoidance, also known as withdrawal, pretends that conflict is non-existent. Accommodation, or smoothing, calls for one to be cooperative and unassertive and ultimately overlook any discrepancies to reduce conflict. Competition, sometimes called authoritative command, is being uncooperative and exceedingly assertive, working against others with force, superior skill, or domination. Compromise transpires when one is moderately cooperative and assertive, giving up something of worth on all ends to disentangle the conflict. Lastly, Collaboration, or problem solving, involves working together on differences to meet the needs of everyone. Avoiding and accommodating refers to what is known as lose-lose conflict, where no one's desires are achieved, nor is the conflict appropriately addressed or resolved. In this situation, conflict tends to be reoccurring and momentarily suppressed. Competing and compromising creates the win-lose conflict, in which the debt is only half settled and one of the participating parties' needs isn't met. This leaves the door open to reoccurring conflict, and the root of the issue isn't technically being solved. Therefore, collaborative is the only conflict management style that creates win-win conflict, where all issues are resolved to everyone's benefit. Structural approaches to conflict management appeal when conflict cannot essentially be resolved at an interpersonal level. Structural methods to handling conflict include making resources available, appealing to higher goals, changing the people or environment, using integrated devices, providing training, and changing the reward system. Divergences are inevitable, so it is imperative that we absorb the steps to appropriately deal with conflict through negotiation and constructive collaboration.